ladies and gentlemen. What if I told you that the moment you stop texting, calling, or explaining yourself is the exact moment he starts to truly think about you, not casually, but obsessively? You think your silence means you're forgotten, but in his mind, it's the loudest wake-up call he's ever had. Day by day, it eats at him. Regret builds, confusion grows, and he starts to realize your absence is more powerful than your presence ever was. Let's talk about what really happens in his mind when you go silent. In the first 24 hours of your silence, his ego talks louder than his emotions. He tells himself you're being dramatic, that you'll come back like you always do. He doesn't panic yet. He thinks you're just trying to get a reaction. So he waits for the message, the apology, the explanation, but it doesn't come. Hours pass. Then the whole day, that's when a quiet discomfort begins to settle in. He doesn't show it, but he notices your absence. Your energy used to be constant and now it's gone. And when something once constant disappears, the mind starts to stir. By day 2, he checks his phone more often than he realizes. Not because he wants to reach out, his pride still holds him back, but because he expects you to. He starts rereading old messages, not to reminisce, but to look for clues. Was there a tone shift? A moment he overlooked? Something that now explains this silence. He scans for signs of your fading interest, but in doing so, he's admitting something to himself. He misses the attention. He misses the emotional security he never acknowledged. He's not sure if he's missing you or just the way you made him feel. By the 3rd day, his confidence begins to slip. Not completely, but enough to feel the difference. He asks mutual friends about you. Casually, scrolls through your social media, looks for signs that you're still paying attention, even from a distance. If you've posted something vague, he wonders if it's about him. If you've posted nothing at all, that worries him more, because silence online matches the silence between you. And that's unfamiliar territory. He's used to you being expressive, available, caring. This quiet version of you, it unsettles him because it means you've changed and he's not sure if it's temporary. By day 4, he starts thinking about what you might be thinking. Are you angry, hurt, over it? His imagination becomes a double-edged sword. On one hand, he wants to believe you still care. On the other, he fears that this silence is you detaching for real. He replays old conversations in his mind. Your words echo in moments of stillness. He remembers the times you tried to express your needs and he brushed them off. The moments you got quiet before and he didn't take them seriously. But now it feels different. Now your silence isn't an act, it's a boundary. Day 5 hits a little harder. He wakes up and instinctively wants to check in on you, but doesn't. The temptation to reach out is stronger than ever. But reaching out would mean admitting he was wrong, and he's not ready for that yet. Still, something inside him feels hollow. He doesn't feel in control anymore. He wonders who you're talking to. If you're finally sharing your heart with someone who listens, that thought burns. Because it means he's being replaced, maybe not physically, but emotionally. And he starts to realize the cost of his emotional laziness. By day 6, it's no longer about the fight or the fallout. It's about the silence itself. He notices the patterns he never paid attention to before. How often you used to message first, how quickly you responded when he needed you, how you always made space even when he didn't. Now, your absence reveals the space you filled, and for the first time, he feels the weight of what he took for granted. It's no longer about winning an argument or proving a point. It's about understanding what he lost when he failed to understand you. That feeling is humbling. Day 7 arrives, and now he's starting to doubt himself. What if you're not coming back? What if this isn't a test, but a transformation? He starts replaying his choices with a different lens, less defensiveness, more honesty. He sees how often he dismissed your concerns, minimized your feelings, or gave the bare minimum while expecting you to stay loyal. Your silence is forcing him to confront the truth. You didn't walk away because you stopped caring. You walked away because you got tired of caring alone. And that realization is both heavy and haunting. By the 8th day, pride begins to lose its grip. He no longer cares about who texts first. That game feels pointless when he's genuinely unsure if you'd even respond. He doesn't want closure, he wants connection. But the problem is, he realizes he only wants it now that it's no longer guaranteed. He underestimated your strength. He confused kindness with weakness. He thought you'd always be there, even when he gave you reasons to doubt. But now you've gone quiet. And in that silence, you've taken your power back. And for once, he's the one left overthinking. Day 9 feels personal, not because of something new you did, but because of everything you've stopped doing. You're not watching his stories. You're not liking his posts. You're not orbiting his life in the background anymore. That subtle withdrawal is louder than any argument you could have had. It tells him you're no longer emotionally available. You're not spiteful. You're just done. And that's scarier than rage, because rage still comes from passion. But indifference comes from healing. And now he's realizing your silence means you're not waiting anymore. You've accepted what he couldn't give and moved on without needing permission. On day 10, he finally admits it to himself. He misses you. Not just the attention, not just the routine. He misses your heart, your compassion, the way you loved without keeping score. And now that it's gone, he knows it wasn't ordinary. It wasn't easy to find. It wasn't something he deserved at the level he was giving. He thought he had more time, more chances. But your silence has taught him something no conversation ever could. You're no longer fighting to be seen. You're no longer hoping he'll notice, because you've noticed yourself. And that shift, he feels it every day. At first, your silence seems like a strategy to him. He assumes you're waiting for a reaction, testing him, playing hard to get. His ego tells him not to worry. He thinks this is a temporary phase, one he can outlast, so he doesn't respond. Not out of strength, but out of assumption. He expects the same pattern, you reaching out first, you explaining, you fixing the disconnect. But that message doesn't come. The days tick by, and suddenly, what he thought was a power play starts to feel like an unsettling change. The pattern he relied on is breaking, and with it, so is his comfort. Now, curiosity begins to creep in. You've gone quiet, and not in a reactive way, but in a composed, confident way. That throws him, because you always cared enough to speak up, to ask questions, to give him a piece of your mind. But now, there's nothing. No texts, no calls, no stories that seem directed at him. He notices this shift, and it bothers him more than he expected. He doesn't admit it out loud, not to himself, not to anyone, but he checks his phone more, replays his last interaction. He wonders, why isn't she reaching out? And that simple question begins to gnaw at him. He doesn't feel in control anymore. In the past, he always felt like he had the upper hand, not because he was cruel, but because he never really had to earn your presence. You were just there, emotionally available, always trying, always hoping. And now your silence is showing him something unfamiliar, that you're no longer accessible, that he's not entitled to your attention. And the very thing he used to take for granted becomes the thing he's now unsure he ever deserved. He starts asking himself, did I misread her? Was she stronger than I thought? And deep down, he knows the answer. This is when he begins to reflect, even if silently. He reopens old conversations, not just in his phone, but in his mind. Moments he dismissed, times he brushed off your feelings. Words you said that he didn't take seriously at the time, now they echo differently. Your silence gives him room to hear what you were really saying all along. Not just with your words, but with your energy. You were exhausted. You were done trying to convince someone to choose you fully. And now that silence is clarity, not just for you, but for him too. And that realization unsettles him. He begins to wonder if he underestimated you, if he mistook your softness for weakness, if he thought your forgiveness meant forever access. Because you never exploded, you never tried to ruin his peace, you just stopped giving him yours. And now that energy shift is impossible to ignore. He begins asking, is she done for good? Did I wait too long? Does she even care anymore? These thoughts swirl in his mind with no outlet because you're not there to soothe them. That silence he once enjoyed now feels like distance he can't cross. And that's a feeling he's not used to. He looks for signs. Anything to confirm you still care. He watches your stories, checks when you're online, tries to read between the lines of your updates. But nothing is directed at him. And that bothers him more than any direct message would. Because when you were vocal, he knew how to respond. Now, he's left with silence. And in that silence, he starts to lose certainty. Not just about you, but about himself. The man who once felt so sure of your presence now feels off balance. He wonders if you've found peace without him. And that, more than anything, scares him. He starts imagining you moving on, laughing with someone else, giving your time, your attention, your care to a man who actually shows up. And that thought, it stings, not because he loves the idea of you being with someone else, but because he's realizing how much he missed while he had you, how much effort he didn't give, how many chances you offered without asking for much in return. Your silence is revealing just how loud your efforts were. And without them, he starts to see what he had. Too late to turn back time, but not too late to feel the loss. He tells himself stories to cope, that you probably still miss him, that you're just acting strong. But as more time passes and your silence remains unbroken, those stories start to crumble. And what's left is doubt. Because if you were just playing a game, you would have folded by now. You would have sent the "I miss you" text. You would have tried to restart the cycle, but you didn't. You've stayed grounded, focused, quiet. That kind of calm doesn't come from emotional warfare. It comes from emotional maturity. And that's what separates you. That's what sets you apart in his mind now. He doesn't know how to reach you anymore. Not emotionally, not mentally. The door he always assumed was open now feels closed. And for once, he doesn't have the key. Because the version of you he knew would have waited, hoped, or at least responded. But the woman you've become no longer needs that connection to feel whole. And that's the shift he never expected. He always thought you'd be there. But now he's the one lingering, hesitating, wondering. And you're not lost, you're not broken, you're just done. Quietly, powerfully, irrevocably. That silence, it's your growth speaking for you. And now he's left with a question he can't shake. What if she's really over it? Not angry, not bitter, just over it. That's what unsettles him the most. Because closure doesn't always come with a dramatic ending. Sometimes it comes with silence, with no explanations, with the simple, unshakable truth that you no longer need him to understand you. You understand yourself. And from where he's sitting, that's the most powerful version. When the silence stretches beyond what he expected, it begins to settle in his chest like a weight. At first, he told himself you were just trying to prove a point, that you'd be back, that it was only a matter of time. But now that confidence starts to slip. He doesn't say it out loud, but he starts missing the little things. Your texts, your encouragement, your check-ins, the emotional consistency you gave him so freely is now gone. And without it, he realizes how much it stabilized him. Not just your presence, but your belief in him. That kind of connection isn't easy to replace. He begins to remember the warmth of your voice, the sincerity in your eyes, the way you actually listened when he talked. Not just heard him, but saw him, understood him, and now he wonders if he ever really appreciated it. Because in the moment, he didn't think it would lead. He thought your care was permanent, something he could lean on without question. But your silence has made something clear. Your energy wasn't free. It came from your heart. And once that heart felt dismissed, it closed. He doesn't know how to open it again. And he's scared that he never really deserved it. The silence becomes a mirror. And in it, he sees his own reflection more clearly. All the times you reached out first. The times you forgave without receiving an apology. The moments you gave more than he earned. Now, there's no one covering up the gaps with affection. No one softening the edges of his flaws. He starts to see the relationship differently. Not through the lens of comfort, but through the truth of imbalance. You were showing up emotionally while he stayed distant. And now, in your absence, the contrast is undeniable. He didn't match you, he just accepted you. And that was never enough. He doesn't miss the routine, he misses the depth. The way your presence made him feel seen. You weren't perfect, but you were real. You asked questions that made him think. You challenged him in ways he didn't even realize he needed. And now that you're gone, those spaces feel hollow. The conversations he has now feel shallow. The attention he gets from others doesn't land the same because they don't know him the way you did. They don't connect to the version of him that you saw beneath the surface. And now he wonders if anyone ever will again. The regret doesn't come all at once. It creeps in slowly. In the quiet moments, in the spaces where you used to be. He hears a song that reminds him of you, sees a message you once sent, thinks of something funny and instinctively wants to share it, only to realize he can't. And it's in those moments he feels it most. The ache of knowing he lost something real. Not because of one mistake, but because of repeated indifference. He didn't choose you when it mattered. He let you feel alone while calling it love. And now you've stopped calling it anything at all. He replays your last words, wondering if there was more meaning in them than he noticed. You weren't dramatic. You didn't beg. You didn't slam the door. But you stopped reaching out. You stopped explaining. You stopped trying to be understood by someone who refused to meet you halfway. That quiet withdrawal wasn't sudden. It was built on many moments of feeling unheard. And now he hears it loudly, clearly, painfully. He realizes now that love isn't about grand gestures. It's about consistent presence. And yours is gone. Not because you didn't care, but because he didn't. The impact of your silence hits hardest at night. When distractions fade and his mind is left with memories, he thinks about the times you stayed up to talk. The way your energy was steady, even when he was distant. He sees now how rare that is. Most people are only present when it's easy, but you were present when it was hard. And that's what he threw away. Not someone who wanted attention, but someone who gave connection. The kind that isn't easy to find, the kind he might never feel again. And that realization cuts deeper than he ever expected. He starts thinking about who you've become in his absence. If you've grown, healed, smiled more, if you've found someone who listens, who gives what he withheld. The thought both stings and humbles him, because deep down, he knows you deserve that. You deserve someone who doesn't take your emotional effort for granted. And while a part of him wishes he could go back and do it right, a bigger part fears it's too late. That the door you left open for so long has finally closed, not with a slam, but with peace. And that's the kind of goodbye that doesn't need words. He wonders if you'll ever look back, if you'll ever miss what you had. But something inside him knows you won't miss the way he made you feel small. You won't miss the waiting, the explaining, the hoping. You might remember the good, but you won't return to the pain. Because you didn't just walk away, you walked toward something better. Yourself, your peace, your power. And now he's left looking at the place you used to stand, realizing he didn't lose you to someone else. He lost you to your own growth. And that's the most permanent loss of all. What hurts him now is the knowing he had a woman who gave fully, who stood by him when he was unsure of himself, who offered love, not as a transaction, but as a truth. And he let it slip, not through cruelty, but through complacency, through silence of his own, the kind where he didn't ask how you felt, didn't say what he really meant, didn't show up when it mattered. And now you've given him the same silence in return, but yours speaks volumes. It says, I loved you, I showed up, I'm done. And he finally understands what that means. There comes a point when he realizes this silence isn't just about space, it's about change. At first he tells himself it's temporary, that you're just in a mood or trying to make him miss you. But as the silence deepens, something begins to shift inside him. What was once confidence becomes hesitation. He starts to ask questions he never had to before. Should he call? Should he text? Would you even respond? The fear isn't just about being ignored. It's about being forgotten. It's about the possibility that you no longer see him the same way. That realization shakes him. He doesn't know how to read you anymore. Your silence has created mystery where there used to be predictability. You used to explain your moods, clarify your tone, check in even when upset. Now there's nothing, and that absence feels like a wall he can't scale. He replays old interactions, wondering if he missed a turning point, if the last conversation held a meaning he overlooked, if this silence is your answer to everything he refused to hear before. The overthinking begins, but there's no message, no signal from you, just quiet. And the quiet, ironically, is now the loudest thing in his life. Pride keeps him from reaching out at first. He doesn't want to look desperate. He wants to believe he still holds power in this dynamic. But with every passing day, that illusion cracks. He feels the distance growing, and it doesn't feel like something time will fix. It feels like something you've accepted, something you've settled into, not out of anger, but out of strength. That scares him more than a confrontation ever could, because silence without bitterness means peace, and peace means you've stopped needing answers. You're no longer holding space for him, and he's realizing it a little too late. He starts wondering what you're doing, if you're hurting in silence too, or if you've already begun healing, if you're talking to someone new, if you're smiling more now that the pressure of the relationship is gone. He pictures you moving on, not with resentment, but with grace, not as revenge, but as relief. That image stings in a way he didn't expect, because he thought he had time to figure things out, time to circle back, time to make up for his inconsistency. But your silence suggests otherwise. It says that time isn't promised and attention isn't owed. In that silence, he starts to understand what emotional detachment looks like. It's not cold, it's not cruel, it's calm. It's you no longer chasing closure, no longer fighting to be understood. It's you choosing to protect your peace over prolonging a connection that drains you. And from where he's sitting, that's terrifying, because it means you didn't need a dramatic ending to walk away. You just stopped showing up for someone who wasn't showing up for you. That kind of power, the quiet, self-possessed kind, is new to him, and he's realizing you've stepped into it fully. The thought of reaching out runs through his mind daily, but so does the fear of rejection. Not because you'll be mean, but because you'll be indifferent. That's the part he's not ready for. He can handle anger. He can even handle tears, but he can't handle your peace. Your silence says, I've outgrown this version of us. It doesn't beg, it doesn't argue, it doesn't wait. And he knows that if he messages you now, he won't be reaching the same woman he once knew. He'll be reaching someone stronger, clearer, more self-assured. And that intimidates him more than he admits. He tries to convince himself that maybe you're waiting for him to say something, that maybe if he just sends the right message, everything will go back to normal. But deep down, he knows better. You're not playing a game. You're not withholding for attention. You've simply made peace with what is. And that's the hardest pill to swallow, because for so long he thought you needed him to feel complete. Now he sees you were giving more than you were getting. And you didn't leave to punish him. You left to finally love yourself better than he ever did. He scrolls through your social media looking for clues, looking for signs that you're still the same, that you're still within emotional reach. But everything has changed. The energy in your smile, the confidence in your presence. You're no longer editing yourself to be more likable. You're no longer bending to fit someone else's comfort zone. And the hardest part for him to admit is this: you look happier, not because of someone else, but because of who you've become without him. That's the kind of glow you can't fake. And it's the kind of glow he now realizes he dimmed. He replays the relationship in his mind, trying to pinpoint where things shifted. And the truth hurts. There wasn't just one moment. There were hundreds of small ones. Moments he didn't listen, times he didn't appreciate, days he let you feel unseen, unheard, unimportant. Your silence now is the echo of all those moments. It's not petty, it's protective. He sees it clearly now. He thought love meant you'd stay no matter what, but you were never staying. You were holding on, hoping, and now you've stopped. Quietly, finally. And that absence speaks louder than any goodbye ever could. He sits with the question he never imagined he'd have to ask himself. Did I wait too long? And the silence offers no answer, only reflection.